Hello, I'm Brandon Martini, a commercial pilot and flight instructor.
And I'm Austin Martini, a student pilot.
And I'm Carson Vasquez, I'm a private pilot.
And you're listening to the Aviation Mentors podcast, sponsored by Stratus Financial.
So buckle up, because the Aviation Mentors are taking off.
Welcome back, everybody, to another great and fantastic episode of the Aviation Mentors podcast. So we're going to be talking about another story time, Brandon's story time. I guess that's our theme for this week. It sounds like, huh, Carson?
It sounds like it. You're a great storyteller. I told you after the last episode we did. And judging by the popularity of these episodes, I think everyone else would agree.
All right, I'll take it. I'll take the compliment anywhere I can get it. So Austin and I actually, and the reason why Austin's on this episode today is because we both did a flight up north. We were lucky enough to go meet up with my buddy Kevin Strange, who you all met a few episodes ago. Kevin has a crazy career background, and as you know, he went to the National Test Pilot School, which we talked about, and he is the chief test pilot for Icon Aircraft. So, of course, whenever I went up there, and Kevin even gave me my tailwheel endorsement back in the day. So, of course, we were going up there. I hit him up, and I was like, "Hey, Kevin, we got to go meet up, and I'd love to do some air-to-air stuff with you if we can, or land on the water, whatever maybe we can do," because I had to go drop it off for the parachute rocket replacement. It's due next month or a couple months from now or something. So I just want to get ahead of it. But recently, we were able to go up there and drop that plane off, and we were able to go splash around in our icons together. And luckily, Austin got to come. And I wasn't actually going to bring him originally. He was supposed to go to his mom's house. And he was like, "Oh, you're taking the icon up there. Can I go?" So I told him, if the plane tickets for the plane ride back are not absolutely crazy expensive, I said, you can go. So I asked my assistant to look up plane tickets, and she said they were less than $200. I said, that sounds fair enough. I've already got a hotel room. I've already got the Uber. I said, it's only $200 more and you get to come with. So we're going to go do it. So Austin got to come up with me. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. How did you set it up with going and fly with Kevin? I mean, he's pretty busy and so are you. So how did you find the time for that one?
So I had this scheduled like months in advance. Because my schedule. Just recording these podcasts lately have been ridiculously difficult. And by the way, it's not ridiculously difficult to get these podcasts scheduled because of Carson. It's like 99% me. The other day I even said, "Carson, just please go record it on your own. I can't do it right now. I don't have time. Like I want to so bad." I've been even recording them at home because I can't make it to our studio lately. So I'm at home right now even doing it, getting ready for Austin's school week about to start on Thursday, which is pretty neat. But yeah, so we were able just to kind of talk about it. And I've been talking with Kevin for a few weeks now. And I asked him if he'd be around. And he said, "Oh, we'll have to kind of play it by ear," because he's always testing different airplanes and flying them and putting hours on them and making sure they're tweaked properly and all that stuff for the new owners to take. So I would texting him on the way up, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'll be flying around. I'm putting a few hours on this plane, so we'll go meet at the lake." And he gave me an air-to-air communication frequency. So as soon as I got up there, I just hit him up. But it was a pretty cool adventure flight though too.
Yeah, how long did it take you to actually get up there? I mean, the Icon's not the fastest plane you have.
No, we were going, I think, like 85 knots or 80 knots the whole way, maybe a little slower than that. I don't know. It was slow. I don't remember. I wrote down the hobs before and after, but I haven't logged it in my logbook yet. But it had to have been 5 or 6 hours, maybe 7. I don't know. It was a lot of flight time. How long did it feel, Austin?
It felt like 7 hours because I was flying most of the time, and it was just so and the seat's not comfortable either, so that doesn't help.
Yeah, it's definitely not a cross-country machine, and that was a pretty large cross-country to do. So it was a pretty cool flight, but those seats are meant to look good, not feel good for 7 hours.
At least you weren't flying coast to coast like your story from last week or last episode.
Well, I've flown coast to coast in that Icon, and that was an adventure itself. I don't know if I ever talked about that, but I mean, I even left it in Dallas for like 2 weeks because I was like, I can't finish this flight. It was just too much. No, I had work I had to get done, but that's why I had to leave it in Dallas for a couple of weeks. But yeah, so I'm glad I didn't have to fly it all by myself all the way around.
Well, yeah, you have your autopilot that you trained, so that's pretty cool. But what was the flight itself like? I mean, I know it was a long flight. I understand that it's not made for comfort, but how'd the flight go?
By the way, the autopilot was fantastic in this flight. Autopilot, Austin Martini 5000, or whatever you want to call him. But he was doing great. Actually, I looked at his track on ForeFlight, and I looked at his track on FlightAware, and it was absolutely perfect. I mean, super straight. Every time he'd get off like 5 degrees, I'd be yelling at him in a nice way, of course. But I'd be like, Austin, aren't you supposed to be on the track? Why are you off track? Why aren't you looking out where you're going? And I mean, it was a combination of being a CFI and being a dad, both at the same time. Is always an enjoyable experience for me. So it was kind of funny. But we actually did a crazy flight. So when I was in Oshkosh, when Carson and I did this, the Icon flight with the new 4-bladed propeller, I went and flew with a guy over there, and his name's Alex, and he's one of the ferry pilots and demo pilot sales guy. And I flew with Alex, and I asked him if he knew anywhere in Southern California that we can go splash around a little bit and actually land. And he said Point Doom, we could go land and splash around. And that was right off of the Malibu coast. So I said, oh, it's probably beautiful over there, as long as we don't irritate people with our airplane noise, because those are like multi-million-dollar homes. So I was going to just try not to irritate anybody with airplane noise, especially with the Icon. It's super loud. So we went and tried to splash around over there, and honestly, it wasn't any better than Long Beach Harbor, where I normally take it. So we ended up just kind of doing a bunch of touch and goes, and then we flew like 10 feet off the water for a good 15 minutes, which was really fun. I mean, just flying that close to the water is always a blast. So we ended up doing that, and then we saw what was it? We saw a helicopter. We saw a helicopter just flying over the ground, and Austin spotted it.
It was extremely cool. It was picking up water, I believe, for training, and I was looking on the map, and I'm like, huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. It was doing, I don't know if it was picking up water. It looked like it was picking up water, probably from his perspective, but I think it was doing, it was training people to like jump from the airplane and do like the rescue. So you could see the water all rippling around, because the helicopter was like, I don't know, probably 20 feet off of the water, 30 feet off the water. So you see its rotor wash just destroying the water below you. And I'm assuming they were just testing maybe people jumping out of the airplane and then re-rescuing them or whatever they were doing. But there was a safety boat right next to it that was probably getting actually sloshed with water because it was like a downspout almost. It was crazy. But we went over there, and then we finished our splash and goes and things that we did over in Point Doom. And we went over to Camarillo, and we were going to go to the FBO and just have them fuel us. But then I saw a self-fuel pit right next to the side of the taxiway. So I called up the ground controller. I said, hey, can we just make a detour and go to the right and go to this self-fuel? He said, proceed as requested. I was like, perfect. Those are my favorite words to hear from a controller. So by the way, any controllers listening, please say those words all the time, especially if you hear any of my airplanes. Just proceed as requested or direct. Something like that is really what we want. So we just got some fuel, used the bathroom. I actually talked to Carson on the phone for 15 minutes or 10 minutes about an issue that we were having, and got that solved real quick. And then Austin and I jumped in the airplane. We said, all right, I think we can make it all the way to Lake Berryessa, which is where we were heading. We want to go to Vacaville, and Lake Berryessa was the lake that we were en route to. Austin actually was able to try to land the airplane again. He hasn't landed an aircraft in a while, so I was kind of talking him through it a little bit, but seeing what mistakes he would make. And he actually got to land the airplane at Camarillo. It was a little off a center line, so I had to correct that and not quite coordinate with his rudder pedals, but did pretty good for not landing an airplane for a while, and he's 12 years old. So, I mean, that's a big one. So how was the landing? How'd you feel about your landing, Austin?
I feel like I was a little too sideways on the landing. I feel like, because with the Icon, it's a smaller airplane, only has 2 seats. So it's really hard to maneuver. And the rudders are a little odd. So I had to put a lot of left rudder and barely any right, or else it would just go whoop and spin around.
Let me
kind of
explain.
You want to translate that?
I'm gonna translate that for everybody. So yes, it does have a different turning motion. So you have to put in more left rudder on this airplane than you would like a normal right rudder airplane, because it's the turning moments the other way, because it's a pusher, not a puller, right? Type of propeller. So yes, there's more left rudder involved than right rudder. But when you're coming in a small airplane like this one, the maneuverability is so high, any control movement you do is going to change the characteristic of the airplane quite a bit. So every little control movement, in his case, were a little too big. So it just made it a little more squirrely. And if anybody's ever flown an aircraft with or a small airplane, a very light aircraft or an ultralight or something, and there's any type of wind around, especially a crosswind, you're going to notice that you have to do a lot of different control movements just to keep the airplane in exactly the right place that you want it when landing. So, but overall, he did pretty good. He leveled off and flared a little bit higher than I wanted him to, but it was totally within safe tolerances and stuff like that. So we had a debriefing after that, after we were getting fuel, obviously, and it was pretty good. But after we ended up leaving there, we ended up taking off, and we had the slowest climb to like 6,000 or 7,000 feet or whatever we were at, 65, 70. I don't remember what it was, but
about 6,000.
6,500, I think is what we went up to. And it was so slow. And we had a little bit of a headwind. It was brutal. And we still had enough fuel. I was watching the fuel to get us all the way to Lake Berryessa. And I was like, okay, we have enough fuel. We might have to make a stop to get fuel if we want to go splash around in Lake Berryessa, which of course we wanted to. I mean, that was part of the whole flight up there. I mean, I wanted to go to a lake that I can actually go land and sit at and sit on the wing and stuff like that. So we wanted to do that. But on our way up there, we were both said, wow. And mostly Austin started off with, Dad, I'm really hungry. Like, oh, you want to? Okay, fine. Let me see if I can find a place to eat. Well, he said, I'm really hungry at the right time. I looked to my right, and like 10 miles to like the northeast, so along our flight path, guess what was there, Carson? One of your favorite airports.
Harris Ranch?
Harris Ranch, absolutely.
Oh, that place is awesome. Little sketchy runway, but Austin, what did you think about that runway?
Yeah, what did you think about the runway?
That runway was the smallest runway in the world, and it was so narrow and it's really short. You had to taxi back to take off. You had to taxi back in the middle of a runway. If there's another airplane coming, I don't want to find out what happens.
Yeah, it's called back taxiing. For all of you who don't know, some airports, they don't have taxiways that you learn at. You actually have to back taxi. And believe it or not, from the last airport, Branson, Missouri, which was a pretty large airport, it was at least a Class Delta airport with a control tower, they gave you back taxi instructions, believe it or not, even at Branson. But this airport is definitely not very big. I don't have it in front of me, but the runway is, I don't know, 40 feet or 30 feet wide. It's super small and it's not very long. I mean, it's long enough to take off in a twin. Carson, what was your experience at Harris Ranch?
Oh, we're flying back from, I think, Sacramento. And we were in the Duchess, which isn't a massive airplane, but it's also not a tiny one. And we were flying down, and Brandon said, hey, you want to go get lunch? I was like, yeah, of course. I said, cool, I know this place. It's called Harris Ranch. But need to find out if it's going to work because we're in a large plane. I was like, what do you mean is it going to work? We can land almost anywhere. And Brandon, what did you say about that?
Well, I said we're going to need a lot of runway, that's for sure. But speaking of the runway, I just looked it up right now, and I was right. It is 30 feet wide. The runway is 30 feet wide, so it's very, very tiny, and is 2,820 feet long. So, I mean, it's not incredibly short, but it's short enough to make you think about it, and especially short enough flying, I don't know, something like a twin. But in the Icon, it takes off really quickly. But landing with 30 feet, I mean, that's pretty small runway.
Yeah, you have to hit on the mark. And I think it was a hot summer day. So we ran those numbers for pretty much everything, our landing distance, takeoff roll, everything we could run. We made sure it was going to work. And we did about 3 or 4 times each. So we're confident that we were going to be able to take off again.
Just like you're supposed to do when you're super current, right, Carson?
That was part of being super current. Thank you for using my word. I really appreciate it. 2024 FAR AIM, 2025, it's going to have super current in it.
By the way, I think we should get t-shirts made that say super current.
We should.
Austin just said, what does that even mean?
Austin, you obviously don't listen to our podcast enough, buddy.
I'm going to start listening to other episodes now.
That's good. You should, as you should. But yeah, so Carson, what airplane did we fly there?
Yeah, we flew the Duchess, and it was a crazy flight all around. That was my first time ever doing multi-engine, having the engine shut off, and I think that was the first time I'd actually flown a multi with you. I got about 6 or 7 hours and a couple interesting landings. So that was definitely the most interesting.
It definitely is most interesting. But, absolutely.
It's not as cool as flying the Icon together, which we still haven't gotten to do. But go back to your Icon flight. Keep going. So what happened after Harris Ranch?
Yeah, so we stopped in Harris Ranch. We got some food, and wanted to make sure that we were all full, and we were. We actually went to the takeout place. It's in the gas station. It's got like a takeout barbecue place. So we both got some sides and barbecue sandwich, which was phenomenal. It wasn't quite the restaurant experience, and I totally forgot to tell them that we were pilots, because then they give you 10% off your meal. And by the way, anybody going to Harris Ranch, you got to tell them or show them your pilot certificate, and they will give you 10% off your meal. But it's okay. I gave it to a good restaurant, so I don't feel bad about it. But it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's a killer restaurant though. It is. That was probably one of the best steaks I've ever had. It was fresh.
It
was moving before we got there.
Probably days before. I mean, it's sorry for any vegans or vegetarians on this pod, or listening to the podcast, but they do have excellent steaks, and they're all grass fed and humanely treated. So I really like supporting them. But nonetheless, I digress. We ended up eating there. We took off. We got some more fuel there, and we said, "All right, let's go. We're on our way to Lake Berryessa." And I'm texting on the way up there. I'm texting Kevin and finding out where he's at. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to be on the lake, so come see me." Perfect. So I get that air-to-air frequency I was telling you guys about, and we get over to Lake Berryessa, and I missed a call. I guess Icon called me from the ground, and I thought they were calling Kevin, but Icon was trying to figure out my ETA, and because I didn't tell him what time I was going to be there, I just said I'll be there sometime. And we left pretty early in the morning. We left at 9 a.m. or something. We didn't end up getting into Icon's facilities until like 6 p.m. or something like that. But Austin says 5:30. I'm still pretty close.
They're calling
so we ended up going past there.
Open.
What's that?
They're calling you like when you leave your flight plan open. Like, hey,
that's exactly.
Proof of life check. You still coming? You still good?
Exactly. It was very similar. But they ended up hearing me on the radio talking with Kevin. So I ended up going down into Lake Berryessa's like valley, and Austin wanted to have his first water landing. He's never had a water landing before. So I talked him through what a water landing is supposed to look like and how to do a water landing. So he got to have his first water landing. So Austin, how was your first water landing? What did you think about it? And what did it feel like? I mean, he's done splash and goes in the harbor over here, but it's not a real landing. You don't stop on the water and taxi.
It was very different from a splash and go. And it's actually quite a bit easier than landing on land. On water, you have kind of more room for error, per se, than on land.
You do, per se. Absolutely, you do. No, you do have a lot more room for errors. Basically, you want to land in a kind of a lane, but if you're off or the wind changes or something, you can actually change your direction of landing, which is the best thing about a seaplane. You can change your direction of landing based on exact coordinates of where the wind is at. So, which is pretty phenomenal, actually. So that's why I really enjoy that type of flying, and it looks like Austin did too.
I have a question to make this a little more educational. With seaplane ratings, once you have your seaplane and you also have a CFI certificate, are you able to immediately start teaching people in a seaplane?
Yes.
Not should you, but can you?
Yes, you can. So everything I do with Austin is all logged as CFI time because I was already a flight actually, I don't know if I was a flight instructor first or second. I think I was a flight instructor first. Yeah, I was flight instructor first. So I got the seaplane rating after I was a flight instructor. So yeah, I was able to flight instruct technically the day after I could.
That's cool.
I wouldn't say I'm a great flight instructor when it comes to seaplane flying, but good enough.
That's what you want to hear when you're flying. Good enough.
Good enough. Just kidding. Good enough to be safe at least, or dangerous. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But no, that's why I don't teach anybody in the Icon. I don't have enough experience flying seaplanes to feel super confident and competent about my flight instruction abilities in that particular kind of seaplane. But I think I might go get the IAFI, which is like the flight instructor version of like a Cirrus CSIP. So I'm thinking about going and becoming one of those, especially now that I've lost all the weight. I can fly with more people now. I don't have to fly with 130-pound people. I can fly with people almost up to 200 pounds now. So that'll be kind of neat to do. At some point, I'll go get that IAFI, and that way I can go do test flights for them or different things like that. It'll be a lot of fun. But on to what we were doing. So we go over, Austin does his first water landing. We come to a complete stop, and I call Kevin up on the radio, and I said, hey, okay, let's meet up with each other. I said, just stay where you're at. I'm going to step taxi and go over to you. So I step taxi and go over, and the winds, and we finally get there. We both turn off the engines, and the airplanes are kind of floating to each other. It's like they're attracted to each other. And and we took some pictures and some videos of him landing and me landing, and we took pictures on top of the wing, and we took a selfie. Me and Austin are sitting on top of the wing with Kevin in the back, just kind of standing up, waving. And it's two icons in the water at the same time. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. You don't get to see that very often. So it was really a phenomenal thing to do and feel, especially when you're that close to the icon factory. It's where little baby icons are born. And this one was only like 3 hours old. It was born. Day old. He said it was a day old. Day old. Yeah. So a day old icon with a 2017 or whatever year mine was made. Yeah, we have icon number 17, and this was like 250 or something like that, or 300. I don't know. It was up there in numbers. So we ended up doing that, and then I wanted to show Austin some good times. So I was showing him power off 180s in the icon, and it drops like a brick when you pull the power out. So I was showing him stuff like that, and we were just having such a good time on the water, step taxiing, and then kind of sailing as well. I showed him some sailing. And we just had such a good time on the water. I was really bummed that it was over when it was over. I was running out of gas, needed more fuel. Otherwise, I probably would have been there another hour or so. But we needed more fuel. And then we told Kevin we're going to go catch up to him. And so we ended up, we had a circle to get out of this mountainous area where Lake Berryessa is. So we circled a couple times to get altitude. And then we departed back over towards Vacaville. And we came in there and we landed, and I couldn't find icon for the life of me because they didn't have just icons sitting outside like I expected. They were all inside a giant hangar, which was really like a warehouse hangar, which was pretty neat. So we get there right behind Kevin, and we end up taxiing the airplane over and bringing it inside. And it was just a fantastic experience overall getting there. And it was even better once we entered inside.
Yeah, it sounds like such a cool flight. What happened inside? Like, what does the inside of an icon factory or warehouse look like?
Austin, you answer that.
The inside of the icon factory. So it had the original molds of the first ever icon that was made, which was extremely cool. And then it had a bunch of different colors that I didn't even know existed, like a blue one and a gray one. And then there was an all yellow one, which looked really cool. And then they showed us prototype versions where they had one to simulate, I believe it was like wind over the wings.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but they did have some like experimental icons there where they would put larger engines in them or different types of propellers and different avionics. And they really kind of tested everything. We even saw one of the original prototypes that actually had because the wings come out and they fold up into the tail. And they showed us an older version where it mounted differently. But it was shown to have problems, so they didn't go with that original design. But I've never seen one with that design. I thought it was something else, and I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's weird. It has a different like hook and latch mechanism rather than the one that goes up into it now. So that was pretty cool. And so we got to tour the factory and see what's up and coming. It's nothing really up and coming, so to speak. They're still building icons, and they're still going to be the same airplane. But it was really kind of neat to see that factory. They don't build all of them there. They originally started there and built all of them, but now they build most of their aircraft in Mexico, and they do kind of the final assembly and touch-ups in California, and then they do delivery out of California, or they do it out of Florida now. So it was a pretty absolute epic place to go to, and just seeing this is an airplane factory. I mean, this is where airplanes are born. It was a really neat experience, and I couldn't trade that for the world. I took some pictures and stuff. I'll try to throw some pictures up too, but it was really, really neat.
They also showed us the first ever icon that was built. We took a picture in front of that, and that was absolutely amazing. It was also in a movie. I forgot which movie, but it was in a movie.
Yeah, he said it was in some movie as well, but it was the first icon ever made. It was icon number 1. And
it's actually flown.
Yeah, and it flew a lot. They did a lot of their testing with this plane, and it looks... the outside exterior looks just like an icon does now, but the inside looks nothing the same. I mean, it looks more like a really cheap experimental airplane inside. It does not look like a $400,000 aircraft that people buy nowadays, or $250,000 used airplane nowadays. It does not look like that. But it was pretty neat. He even told us a story about how he thought the tail was too short, so they cut off the tail and extended it, and then they made it have a longer tail, or empennage. And that was kind of neat to see. And you can kind of see where they would kind of Frankenstein this airplane to make it into what it needed to be. And then they created molds from that airplane, I think. So it was a phenomenal experience there. And after that, we ended up, I ordered an Uber. We were just going to go to a restaurant, like a bar and grill place, and we are going to go get dinner. We got recommended it by kind of the chief guy over there. And we were waiting for our Uber, and then Kevin shows up out of nowhere, and I thought he already left for some reason and just didn't say bye. And he said, "Oh, I was in a meeting." He said, "But I got permission from the wife to go out to dinner tonight. I don't have to be home all night, at least not till late." I said, "Okay, fine, let's go." So I canceled my Uber, paid my $6 cancellation fee, and we jumped into to his truck with our suitcase in hand, and ended up going over, and we had dinner and drinks with him. And
we were up until like 1 a.m.
We were not up until 1 a.m, but we ended up getting back to. We got to the hotel at 12, and the hotel was an hour and a half away that we were staying at. So we were out hanging out till 10:30. So we were there for about 3.5 hours. But it was really neat. We were hanging out, and then there was another guy. His name's Randy. And he was one of the first Icon employees, like in the top 10 Icon employees, I think. He told me his number before, but he was one of the originals. And he's the chief of all the maintenance there. So I got to talk with him, and I actually really got to know him on a personal level because we had dinner together. He came and had dinner with us. He just randomly went there, actually. He was going to have dinner by himself, and he saw us. And so he met us there and ended up eating dinner with us. And we had a great time. I got to know him on a real personal level, like I said. And we ended up talking, and he just texted me earlier this morning, and he needs my logbooks. I forgot to bring them up with me. So now I had Kavu send the logbooks up there today. They're going to be up there tomorrow or the next day. And I'm looking forward to seeing him again when we go up there. And he said he's going to come on down here because he used to be out of Long Beach. He used to work with race cars. And he said, yeah, with race cars, it's all about creating an airfoil with downward to keep those wheels on the ground. And now we're doing it the opposite to keep the wheels off the ground. And that was pretty neat for him to kind of tell his story about how he worked with, he said either F1 or some other type of large racing organization. Which was really phenomenal to see. But yeah, after that, we just hopped in our Uber, went to the hotel after getting there super late. We just had such a good time chit-chatting and talking about airplanes. And then we had to wake up at like 4:30 or 5 a.m. the next morning and get to the airport early for like a 6 a.m. flight. And our flight got delayed for an hour. And then another hour, and then another hour. And then we missed all the other flights that could have left to LA or Long Beach or anywhere by this time. And finally, they came out and said, oh, it's going to be another 4 hours. So it was like an 8-hour delay to go from Sacramento to LA. So I ended up canceling that flight. I found another flight through Delta or United, whatever the opposite of the one we were on. And we were luckily able to get a seat on that airplane pretty cheap. It was only like $50 more than what we bought originally. So we ended up getting on that. We flew into LAX and had to Uber pick us up and drove us to go pick up my truck at Long Beach Airport, and went and picked that up. And that was kind of the end of our trip. But it was just such a fun flight. And I couldn't trade that for the world. I mean, all of the landing in the water, and it was beautiful out too. I took a bunch of pictures.
Well, I feel like I didn't have a total understanding of why Brano was so obsessed with seaplanes until I flew in the Icon. And after you do it, you understand. There is something totally magical about landing in the water and being on the water in an airplane. Two things that you just think should not mix. And these two things do, and it makes an awesome experience. And it's something that I think everyone should go and do at some point.
Absolutely, I agree. And I know, Carson, you were asking a little bit earlier. I don't know if you ever asked on the podcast, but you're asking about Icons are limited on their waves. You want to know kind of what it's like to land on water if there's big waves or small waves or things like that. And it's really 12-inch waves that you can deal with. You can't deal with anything more than that. And it's not It's not very much. Otherwise, you're just going to have the water going over your entire canopy. And if you've got the windows out, on the side windows out or something, it's going to engulf your airplane. You've got a bilge pump, and it's only going to do so much. So you have to be careful. That's why we don't land in Long Beach Harbor and actually sit on the water and land, because we'd probably get engulfed with water. But over there, it was only a few inches. There was a little bit of wind, but like I said, Lake Berryessa is kind of in like a valley. So it's really pretty calm, especially next to the water. And of course it can pick up there, but it didn't that day. It was just perfect water to go land and splash around. But Icon's limited to 12 inches. And if you're at 12 inches of swell or wave or something like that, it's not fun to land in. You really can't stop on the water landing in that type of water anyway. So, but yeah, that's my whole story. It was a blast. Austin, you have anything else to add to a story, or?
Not really.
Not really. So I think we did it. So with that all being said, I hope you enjoyed our story of taking the Icon basically across the state of California to go get its rocket replaced. And I hope you enjoy the next episode. I haven't had any other epic flights lately, so the next flight will have to be on when I go pick it up, which will be in a couple weeks probably. So it'll be a lot of fun. But if you'd like to reach out to either one of us, you can reach me at Brandon@aviationmentors.com, or you can reach Carson at Carson@aviationmentors.com.
And as a wrap up for the day, remember, we're here to guide you in your aviation journey. So fly safe and enjoy the ride.
See ya.
See ya.